I'm Greg Braun, Executive Director of the Guardians of Martin County, and I'd like to welcome you to this next in our series of podcasts, where this time we're going to be talking about the Ocean Research Conservation Association. ORCA is one of the organizations that the Guardians supports and partners with on a variety of water quality kinds of projects. So they've been doing this for a number of years, and I've got with us today both Edie Witter, the founder and executive director of ORCA, and also Missy Weiss, who is their citizen science coordinator. So thank you both for being here with us today. We're going to take about a half an hour and learn about ORCA and learn about what you've been doing for water quality in our area. I know you do water quality kinds of work throughout the Indian River Lagoon, and while you may mention some of those, our focus here certainly is on the waters in the Martin County area. So with that initial introduction, Edie, tell us a little bit about yourself and about ORCA.
So I'm actually a deep sea biologist. I moved here from California to work with the Johnson Sea Link submersibles. And when that program was winding down, I was going to move on, but there had been a couple of reports about the state of the ocean that were pretty alarming, and I was distressed by the deterioration I'd seen in the Indian River Lagoon and ended up starting ORCA as an idea for trying to address these challenges, largely from a technological perspective, but mostly science-based decision-making that I thought was missing from our management of our most precious resource, the Indian River Lagoon.
Yeah, very good. And I think I first met you when you were making a presentation at one of the State of the County addresses. And that must have been, 10 or 15 years ago or something like that. How long has ORCA been in existence?
We started ORCA in 2005, so next year is our 20-year anniversary.
Yeah, very good. Which is a challenge for nonprofits these days, especially when we're often kind of advocating science that isn't necessarily paid that much attention to by some of the elected officials and that sort of thing. So we applaud you for your diligence in trying to keep science at the root of all the work that you do.
Well, thank you. You're correct. It's been a challenge in many cases. I had no idea how low on the priority list environmental funding tends to be, but we've actually done quite well.
Yes. Well, tell us a little bit about that funding side of things. Do you work mainly off of donations, or do you have state and federal grants or county grants, or where did the funds come from?
About a third of our funding comes from state and federal grants, a third from private donors, and a third from foundations like yours.
Yeah, very good. I know I'm serve as the Guardian's representative on the Indian River Lagoon National Estuary Program on their Citizens Advisory Committee, and a number of your projects have been reviewed by our committee, so I know that they have provided funding, and so I suppose that's an example of one of those other funding sources. What are some of the other ones?
The Community Foundation of Martin and St. Lucie has been a wonderful funder of ours. We got funding from the Francis Langford Foundation through them and through their Environmental Action Fund.
Yeah, very good. Yeah. Well, so let's talk a little bit about some of the projects that you've worked on in Martin County waters. One that has been of interest to us has been related to golf courses. And I know your study was actually up in the Vero Beach area where your office is now, but it's pertinent to us because of the number of golf courses that have been proposed in Martin County in recent years. So I think most of us have generally the mental perception that golf courses are aesthetically pleasing because it takes so many fertilizers and herbicides and pesticides and everything else to keep them looking good. But tell us a little bit about the study that you did up there. Was it at the moorings or where in the Vero Beach area?
Yeah, so we have a number of approaches to tracking pollution in the lagoon, and it started high-tech with our water quality monitors, the Kilroys. But we also wanted to be able to position them in key places. And so that's what led to the development of our pollution mapping protocols, where we go out and we take sediment samples from the bottom of the lagoon and measure the nutrients and pollutants that accumulate in those sediments. And so the very first map we did, our proof of concept, was in Vero Beach between the bridges. And we looked at, for example, the amount of nitrogen and phosphorus in the sediments. And there were some real surprises that jumped out at us, because these are like heat maps, and where red is the most polluted and blue is the cleanest. And we were surprised to see how very, very polluted things were within the canals between the bridges. Except there were 2 canals up near the Vero Beach Country Club that weren't red the way the others were. And that seems surprising because, as you say, golf courses usually are vilified for being a source of nutrients. So I went to the Vero Beach Golf Club and talked to them about what their protocols were. And it turns out that they used a low-dose organic liquid fertilizer. They bag all of their grass clippings, which I think is huge, because grass clippings are a much bigger problem than I ever would have imagined initially. And they don't poison any of their water hazards. They let plants grow in the water hazards. And so it was nice to be able to tell a positive story and show people that we can improve the health of the Indian River Lagoon if we're just smart about how we do things. And we can still have golf courses even.
Yes, excellent. So was this a new golf course, or had they recently retrofitted it, or how is it that it sounds like it exceeded the minimum standards and requirements?
Well, actually, we've been finding out that there are a number of golf courses in the area that are, for example, Audubon certified, and that makes a big difference. Another ones that we looked at was around the moorings, and there's this hook of land that sticks out into the lagoon, and it's a typical golf course, it seems, but it's completely surrounded by mangroves, and so that heat map shows very little pollution around that golf course as well. So it's just management.
Yeah, very good. So there have been several golf courses that have been proposed in Martin County in over the last couple of years, and I think that is it's different than the nationwide trend of a lot of golf courses not doing well financially. And so the Guardians have been very interested in trying to make sure that as these golf course projects move forward, that they are not contributing to a pollutant load, especially because a couple of them are in the C44, the St. Lucie Canal watershed. And so I think that's partially a good thing, in that they will be taking water out of the C44 for use on their golf courses. And so if it is nutrient-enhanced water to begin with, as they have described to us, the water is routed around through their system and may not have any discharge back into the C44 at all. But if there is, that it would likely be cleaner than the water that they have taken out of the canal. So I think that's we hope that happens.
Yeah, and it's very important that we be monitoring when things like this are attempted, so that we know that it's doing what we think it's doing. We are also concerned about other pollutants that are ending up in the system, like golf courses do use glyphosate as a weed killer, and we need to be aware of how that may be impacting the ecosystem.
Right. So I guess the concerns about golf courses and water are several-fold. One is about those water quality kinds of things, but also just it takes a lot of water to make a golf course as green as it is. And so I think for these projects that are not withdrawing water out of the superficial aquifer, but instead out of the C44, if it's also preventing that water from needing to flow into the estuary, that's a good thing as well.
Actually, that's really important. Yes, drawing water out of the aquifer is becoming of increasing concerns, because it just makes no sense to drain that precious resource for a crop that nobody can eat.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. You mentioned monitoring, and so let's go down that path a little bit because the Guardians certainly feel that it is very important, and I'm afraid we've kind of gotten a bad rap recently for not supporting a couple of these large-scale projects that are outside the urban services boundary. And one of the reasons that we have not supported them is we initially asked the developer to do some water quality monitoring, and they have refused. And then when they refused, we asked the county to require it, and the county wouldn't require it. And essentially what we're told is that, well, there will be monitoring will be done to the extent that it's required by the South Florida Water Management District. And although I just have a superficial knowledge of that whole process, I don't believe that it gets down to the details of many of the parameters that we're concerned about. And certainly the frequency of the sampling isn't as robust as what the Guardians had hoped to do. So tell us a little bit about your Kilroys and sort of continuous in-stream monitoring versus like a once a quarter grab sample or something like that.
Yeah, just to take a grab sample, as you say, once a quarter, the water's always on the move, and you could easily miss a lot of pollution or misidentify what your primary concerns are. And to have real-time monitoring so that you can observe, for example, the drop in oxygen preceding a fish kill or huge pulse of nitrogen or phosphorus coming into the system and try to be able to track it backwards to figure out where it's coming from. We're very concerned about focusing on upstream solutions to our pollution problems. There's a tendency to shift to downstream solutions as things get worse, and they're never real solutions. They often have unintended consequences, and they're very costly. They're benefiting whoever is sprinkling pixie dust on the pollution to make it go away because you have to pay every year for more pixie dust. But what we need to do is stop the pollution from coming into the lagoon right from the get-go.
Right. So the Kilroys are infrastructure, hardware that can be fitted with sensors for a whole variety of parameters, whatever is of particular interest at a site. And then am I right that the Kilroys can be moved around and they will be continuously recording data on whatever the parameters are of interest?
That's correct. And all of that data is streamed to our website at teamorca.org. It's available for free. You don't even have to register to be able to look at it. We have a huge number of parameters that we're measuring and tracking on a real-time basis. And it's all there for the public to be able to observe and learn for themselves what's happening in their own backyard.
Yeah, great. Because certainly the once a quarter grab sample is not going to show those big slugs of water that we get right after a big thunderstorm or something like that. But it's interesting that those Kilroys are doing the water quality monitoring, but some of the studies that you were talking about have actually been analyzing the sediments. Is that right?
Yeah, we go out and we do these pollution maps and take samples from the sediment and try to look at that to look for hot spots of where different types of pollutants may be coming from. As you say, you can move the Kilroys around, but it's an endeavor to move it. One of the advantages of the Kilroys is they're smaller than most other such monitoring systems, so they can go in canals, which we think is very important for looking for these upstream solutions. We've got about 25 of them out right now, up and down the full length of the Indian River Lagoon and most of the major inputs into the lagoon. But because we can't have as many as we want out there, then those quarterly hand samples that you talked about can still be very useful. And we have a fairly extensive citizen science program where we have citizen scientists going out and greatly expanding our understanding of where the pollution is coming from.
Yeah, and I want to reserve enough time for Missy to tell us more about that citizen science program. But while we're on the issue of water and sediment quality. One of the studies that you did a couple of years ago was of particular interest to the Guardians. As you know, from our Loxo-Lucy Headwaters initiative, what we're trying to do is acquire properties between the Jonathan Dickinson, the northern part of the Loxahatchee River, and the South Fork of the St. Lucie, which historically has had some of the worst water quality in Martin County, surface water quality in Martin County. And so our hope is that in acquiring and then doing some hydrologic restoration on those properties, we're going to be able to reduce those levels of pollutants that are coming in to the South Fork. Now, certainly, we all recognize that when the Corps of Engineers is doing discharges from Lake Okeechobee, that overwhelms the discharges from the local basins. But we know that the Corps of Engineers, through the LOSUM project, are trying to address those kinds of things. But you did a study in the South Fork, and I think you had like 25 different sampling locations, and you analyzed a variety of parameters. Can you give us a kind of thumbnail sketch of the results of that project?
Yeah, they were very interesting maps. And by the way, all of our pollution maps are also on our website at teamorca.org under our mapping header, including all of those maps. So we measured a whole lot of different things. But of course, the first and foremost is total nitrogen and total phosphorus. And one of the things that was very surprising was the low levels of phosphorus in the South Fork, which we weren't expecting to see. But the South Fork goes into that big basin right next to the Roosevelt Bridge, and there was lots of phosphate there. So we think what was happening was the fine sediments that hold the phosphate were, when they do a dump from Lake Okeechobee, are being blown into that basin. We saw just a tremendous amount of information looking at, for example, heavy metals, copper, for example. There were some pretty extreme hotspots for copper, some of which we suspect are coming from the use of copper sulfate to poison water, fire ponds. Some of which do come from bottom paints for boats. And then also as part of our citizen science program that we're extending down into Martin County, we're trying to see how some of these pollutants that we are measuring are ending up in the food web, and that involves our citizen scientists extensively.
Yes, well, thanks for that explanation, because I noticed in one of those heat maps for the South Fork study, there was a hot spot that appeared to be on the west side of the river near the base of the new Veterans Memorial Bridge. I was trying to figure out, what's going on there, but now that you describe it, that may be where the sediments that are being washed down the C-44 end up accumulating. So thanks for that explanation, and we'll encourage people to go to take a look at those graphics because they are very insightful. So you mentioned fisheries as well, and so I know the Guardians were able to provide a little bit of financial support towards your lagoon health and fish monitoring. Tell us a little bit about that project, if you would.
Well, I think the person to tell you about that is sitting next to me here, Missy Weiss. She heads up our citizen science program and is very passionate about it.
Okay, well, go for it, Missy.
Okay, great. I'd be happy to. So the One Health Fish Monitoring Citizen Science Project is just one of 4 of our citizen science projects that we have here at ORCA. But specifically, the One Health Fish Monitoring Project investigates the transfer of toxins and toxicants from the Indian River Lagoon and those connecting freshwater ways into fish that have been identified as being commonly consumed by people. And then with that information, we're better able to estimate the potential human health risk, if any, through the consumption of those fish. So we're able to really tie in some of the information and knowledge that we achieve from our ecotoxicity maps and Kilroy's and how that impacts the marine food web, but also how it impacts human health.
Great. So you have volunteers who provide the fish to you that you analyze. Is that right?
That's correct. So actually, we have volunteers from the community participating in every component of this project, from not only catching and donating those fish, but also coming into our lab or one of our pop-up locations and helping us process those fish or dissect those fish, essentially removing the tissues and organs that are later analyzed. We have volunteers coming in and helping us extract some of those toxins and toxicants from those fish tissues as well. So there are people involved in every component of this citizen science project.
Great. And so how would one who's interested in volunteering for this become engaged? They just reach out to you on the website or give you a call or what?
Either. All. They can go onto our website and they can look up a little bit more information about the project. So again, teamorca.org into our One Health Fish Monitoring project page. And that will provide a link to register for an upcoming webinar or information session where they can learn and participate in the actual project itself. But anyone is also welcome to email me at any time as well to get involved. And we're very, very fortunate that in April, we received an Impact 100 Martin County grant, which will allow us to really hone in on the fish from Martin County waterways and be able to very much investigate in a more in-depth manner what is accumulating in the fish, specifically in Martin County waterways. We're very excited to be able to participate in that and also welcome anyone in the community to get involved in that portion as well.
Yeah, great. So you're probably then recording not only the species of fish, but also the location that it has been caught?
Yes, that's correct. So we look at it geographically. So where are those species caught, species? And then, as I mentioned, there's a whole panel of analytes that each individual fish is tested for as well. So that includes heavy metals, microplastics, PFAS or forever chemicals. We're also going to be looking at pharmaceuticals and controlled substances on the fish in Martin County, as well as several biotoxins.
Wow. Well, it's got to be expensive to go through all of those analyzations, if that's the right word for it, but very useful information to get. I have heard about pharmaceuticals getting into fishes. Do you have enough results from the studies so far to kind of summarize what you might be finding either by species or by locations?
We don't have data on pharmaceuticals and controlled substances yet. That's something brand new to the project that the impact funding will be able to provide for us. We have information currently on our herbicides, our heavy metals, and microplastic data, as well as microcystin data that we can share. But at this point, the controlled substances and pharmaceuticals will come down the road.
Yeah, okay. Well, the Guardians have been investigating with the county the whole situation with PFAS, various forever chemicals. And so we're interested to sort of step up that monitoring and treatment process through county and municipal water treatment systems that up till now, I think overall, they don't treat those parameters.
Well, fish are a wonderful proxy for some of these contaminants and pollutants in our waterways, and they can really be a good indicator as to what's entering to the system and to what degree. So compounds like PFAS are of particular interest to us as well because fish are just another exposure rate that humans can be impacted when they consume them. So all of this is really important to our community and not just those who are consuming fish, but those who are interested in our waterways and how we can better serve those waterways and improve the water quality.
Right. Perfect. So tell us a little bit about the cyanotoxins that may be drifting down to us from Lake Okeechobee. When we see those visible algal blooms, certainly the fish that can escape do escape, but others no doubt assimilate some of that. Do you have any results on sort of the uptake of cyanotoxins, or does it just kill the fish, or does it uptake in their tissue?
So we're trying to better understand a little bit about how those cyanotoxins are accumulating into fish, but we don't really know how long they're harboring those fish. Are the fish able to purge those cyanotoxins and to what degree and how long does that take? So what we're really doing is kind of looking at the fish in a moment in time. So we are continuously monitoring those individuals and comparing it to when they're caught to be able to determine whether or not there are concentrations of microcystin at a high enough level that would be impacting or accumulating those fish tissues. Of the 500 or so fish species that we have analyzed for microcystin at this time, all throughout the Indian River Lagoon, we haven't found detectable concentrations of microcystin, but this is a monitoring program. This is a monitoring project. So we can, when there are blooms in the environment, we can compare that to fish tissue and determine whether or not it's actually accumulating into those tissues at this time.
Yeah, great. So all this information, as you have said, is available on your website. And as we begin to wrap up here, tell us again how people can find your website and how they would go about making a contribution, either financial or as a volunteer in your citizen science network.
Sure. So I would encourage people to visit our website, so teamorca.org, poke around our mapping section, our citizen science section, and that will tell you how you can get involved in any of our projects and our research. We encourage people of all ages, backgrounds, ethnicities to be a part of the applied science research that we conduct here at ORCA. Anybody can be a part of it. We will train you and mentor you along the way. And science is expensive, so we always encourage people that if they feel inclined, they can donate to our work, to our research. They can do that, again, through our website, or take a trip up to Vero Beach and check out our new DJ Renowned Science and Research Center, and you can see for yourself the incredible work that's being done here and how our community is part of that.
Yes, I heard that you moved recently, and so you do have a facility that is open to the public, and if so, what's the location?
So we just are moving into the building now. Our ribbon cutting is next week, next Thursday. It's very exciting to us. We are on 16th Street. So you just go across the 17th Street Bridge. We're 1235 16th Street, Vero Beach. And we're, it's going to be the focus of our analytical and basic science research, applied science research, I mean.
Yeah. Okay. Well, great. I'm sure that a transition is always difficult when you move to a new facility, but I hope that it has been going well and that you get settled in well. So I want to thank you, both Edie Witter and Missy Weiss from ORCA, for joining us for this podcast to tell us a little bit about water quality and ORCA. We've got a couple of other upcoming programs where we're also going to be talking about water quality. It's one of the key issues that the Guardians are most interested in. Certainly we get the most amount of attention for our position on growth management kinds of things, but water is the key to everything as far as the environment in Martin County. So we appreciate ORCA and the other organizations that participate in water quality kinds of things. So in a future podcast, we will be talking with the folks from the Indian River National Estuary Program and also from the Rivers Coalition, because they've done a great job in making the situation with water quality in the Martin County area not just an environmental issue, but an issue that's important to the over 100 different organizations that make up the Rivers Coalition. Future podcasts will be about controlling urban sprawl, which is a key issue for us, anyhow, as Martin County commissioners appear to be continually asked to allow projects outside the urban services boundary. So we're going to be talking with the folks from Thousand Friends of Florida about urban sprawl. As many of you also know, the Martin County Commission has recently agreed to put an item on the November 2024 ballot for acquiring new conservation lands. So we're going to be talking with the folks who are spearheading that effort from Martin County Forever. And then one of the other programs for later this year is going to be about plants. Now, we seem to often focus on that charismatic megafauna and dolphins and manatees and that sort of thing. But plants need defenders too. And so we're going to be talking about some of the threatened and endangered plants in Martin County and the Treasure Coast area. So stay tuned for future podcasts. We intend to continue putting them out about once per month. So thanks again, Edie and Missy, for taking the time this morning.
Very happy to do it.
Thank you so much.